Good morning. Welcome to the Naples Money Managers News You Can Use. It is November 2nd, as John tells me. I don't know why I'm so bad with dates, but apparently I am. Obviously, Marcus Bickle has joined us this morning, and John Kincaid
Hello, everyone.
will jump in a little while later. And as usual, I have a few things I want to say first. First, I want to say Roberta, who's out there listening, I'm sure, thought our set should look a little nicer. So we add a little fall colors to our set. Last time it was a witch, this time it's fall colors.
Very festive.
That's right. And I also wanted to take a little shout out to my neighbor in Vermont who actually cut and colored my hair. For all the women out there, you know, this is a pretty big deal. So I was really happy to get my hair cut. Those of us have long
I think I said it looked really nice
You
when you first
did.
walked in.
You were like
too,
the first person to notice. And, you know, when you have long hair, it's not a big deal. But when you have short hair, like you guys and a lot of ladies, not getting your hair cut's a big deal. It's a big deal. So, hi, Lori. Thank you for that. So I got that done. Put that over here. A couple little things I always try to bring out is market was really down last week.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people started to feel uncomfortable. We got a few of those calls, like, should I be in cash? What's my annuity doing? And by the way, next week I'm going to do a little segment on annuities. So I think we should talk about them a little bit more with the fluctuating market and what their real purpose is supposed to be inside anyone's portfolio.
And we do get a lot of questions surrounding those, especially this time of year.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. They're contractually driven. So every annuity company has a different contract, which makes them all different.
Absolutely.
And that makes a challenge for all of us out there. But there were a few things that we talk about for risk. Mortality or longevity risk. We've talked about this before. When you're young, your risk goes way down because you have a long time,
Absolutely.
presumably, right?
Yes.
And I think that would make a nice segment for us to do too. Talk about, I could talk about some of the stocks that I bought and sold and should never have sold when I was just a youngster.
Oh, we all have that list, I think.
Well, and I think that it's important to talk about it because we all have it and we think, oh, it's just a matter of fact, a matter of being, but it's more than that. It's about strategy and style and understanding risks. The other was market risk. Of course, we all know that's out there. We saw that last week, and I think a lot of people panicked, and you're going to comment on
Absolutely.
that. Health risk is another one of our big risks.
Yeah, healthcare costs are a big deciding factor for a lot of Americans. It really, really is.
Right, and that could affect the living long enough part, right? Family risk. Now, this is something we don't talk about a lot, but family risk is huge.
What do you mean by family risk?
Are you taking care of a parent? Are you taking care of adult children? Do they need help? Some of the adult children need help making their mortgage payments. The average, I think, is like $30,000 a year that parents spend on their children to help them.
I can see that.
I don't think that's a big number, but be interested to hear what everyone else thinks. And the last one is policy risk, which takes us into the elections.
Right. No, absolutely. Well, as Don said, it is November 2nd, so November 3rd, Election Day, is right around the corner. Yeah, well, I mean, the good news is it'll all be over, regardless.
We hope.
We hope very soon.
Right.
Obviously, the big concern I think on everyone's mind, besides whether their guy wins or not, is kind of an extended electoral battle, kind of what we saw in 2000,
Right.
the infamous hanging chads. I think that's my first real memory of politics. God, how old would I be?
Let's not
Yeah.
and explain what a hanging chat is for those who might not know.
Well, so I guess back then they would have punch outs for the voting for the ballots, and I guess there was some ambiguity as to whether or not they were completely punched out.
Right.
And whether or not they were punched out for that particular candidate, and so they challenged the ballots, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And well, as we know, Bush's history, so we know how that turned out. But I think people are kind of worried about that fight, and I know both sides are geared up. Both sides have hired a great deal of lawyers to potentially deal with any kind of electoral contestation. So,
Well, weird things can happen because I will tell you, I went to put in my early vote. I guess Saturday was the last day you could drop them off for early voting. And so the first time I went, I couldn't find it, of course. So then I went the second time, it was at the end of Orange Blossom and Airport, I think, or something like that. I don't know. I went down Orange Blossom and saw all these tents, and somebody said, you just take it and you drop it off in the tent. So all these cars in front of me, I thought, wow, lots of people early voting. I pull in and a guy comes up and I hand him the 2 ballots and he goes, what do you want me to do with these? And I said, I'm voting early. And he goes, well, not here. He goes, this is the art show.
Oh my God.
He says, you probably want to take those across the road. So you can make mistakes and mess up your ballots by dropping them off at the art show tent.
I did something very, very similar. On Thursday, I voted early. I drove up to Bonita because I live in Lee, and I walked in. So again, I saw a big line and thinking, oh well, this is where I go. No, that was the DMV. The early voting was next door. I figured that out and went over.
Okay, that's 2 for 2.
It is. So,
that's scary.
be prepared if you are planning to vote on November 3rd for any kind of anything. Just be ready for you have your ducks in a row because weird stuff does happen.
Are your
You go to
young
the wrong
friends
places.
voting? Most of them are.
Well, we're not exactly young anymore.
Well, I think it's all relative,
Everyone in my age group has pretty much voted that I know of. There's a few holdouts, always those people who the never voters, and you can't get them to the polls no matter how hard you try.
I know a few people like that too. As a matter of fact, I think that there's going to be probably, as you said, some real market fluctuation based on a lack of a decision. I think what we're seeing in the markets, although, and I think everybody wants to talk about it, right? We had a bad week last week.
Absolutely.
Just a bad week. I wasn't going to come to work. Just kidding. And yet, near the end of the week, we started to see some activity and some positiveness. What do you think was causing all that?
Well, so I think it was 2 things. I think it was definitely we're entering the winter months, and COVID-19 is definitely beginning to. It feels like it's accelerating a little bit, especially in particular parts of the world.
Right.
We began to see last week some rumblings about Europe beginning to enter lockdown. Come today, we are seeing Germany, France, Great Britain. All entering a month-long lockdown, and that looks like it's probably going to be par for the course for much of Europe. Now, why that's important is because for the first time we're seeing some real pushback in Europe towards this kind of lockdown, which obviously we had seen here, but we had not seen in other parts of the world. So that kind of speaks to the fact that people are a little sick of these lockdowns, and that's not to politicize it at all, but.
Well, it's a fact. Think about it. At some point, you're going to either die from, you don't have an income because your business is shut down, you're going to die from the virus. I don't know which one I pick. I'm being very flip about that. But I think that in a way, when you think about the fact that you're getting pushback is going to cause an alternative solution. So right now, if you're trying to fly overseas, they've got this new test that they do when you get in the airport.
Right, the antigen test.
The antigen test, and bingo, you can get on the plane or you can't get on the plane. They're talking about something along that line when you go into restaurants, go into movie theaters, and some of those places where the congregation is necessary for a business to succeed. So maybe that pushback will cause usually that's what happens,
Sure.
will cause a solution.
They find a new way to do things
while we're waiting for the vaccine or whatever.
And I think Dawn is right. The particular airline she was mentioning, United, I think, started with that, and they are trying to get these large these countries that have like the quarantine when you land to drop those quarantines
if you
have a certified negative test.
Yeah, there's 90% reduction in overseas travel right now.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah, that's big. That's really big.
And that does kind of speak to what we saw last week, right? We saw a full 5.6%, not a full correction, but a half of a correction, basically.
From the high?
From the high,
I thought it was more than that.
No,
wow.
5.6 we calculated.
Okay, felt like 10 or 20 to me. I was just like,
Especially if you were looking at particular areas. Boeing, to your point about air travel.
Right.
Boeing was down 13% last week, which is that's a big drop for an already beat up position. Other things, a big surprise for me would be Walgreens. Walgreens was down 10%.
Because Walgreens, really?
They had bad earnings, so that there was that. But you would think, they primarily sell prescriptions. Why would they be down?
The big part of their business is sort of like Cracker Barrel. When you walk in, there's that whole pile of stuff you can buy. on the way in and the way out. And that's what Walgreens and CVS, a lot
Foot
of those
traffic.
pharmacies make a lot of money on these products that they sell outside of the pharmaceutical business. So if they don't have the traffic coming inside, then they're going to be losing a lot of revenue. So that makes sense to me, actually, when you think about it.
So we are seeing a lot of that. Now, one thing that Dennis and I were talking about prior to the show was, when you look at Walgreens, which is down 10%, Walgreens hasn't done anything this year. Their stock is essentially flat now, down 10% after earnings. That's a hard loss.
Mm-hmm.
Now you look at a stock like Nvidia. Nvidia is up 400% this year. Now, Nvidia followed the market down last week with, I think, a full 8% move. But when you're up 400%, that matters a little bit less. So we're beginning to see these really explosive growth stocks beginning to outpace the market, and it's beginning to compound I hate to say bloodbath that we're seeing in value, where people weren't buying them, and now people aren't buying them because
people weren't buying what?
The value.
The value, and now they are.
And now they aren't.
And now they aren't.
Because people weren't anyway. So it's kind of like a double effect. It's like compounding.
Yeah.
So, we're seeing the big stocks kind of pull away, and the ones that were not doing well do even worse. So it'll be interesting going
But
forward.
if you live long enough, guys, it all works out and value will be back.
Don is absolutely right.
Because small cap really is always the top performer over time. It really is, and it's just one of the ones that's the most volatile. So I think, you have anything else you'd like to share?
That's it for now.
I've probably talked way too much, but now we're going to bring John Kincaid on. No magic, just pure intelligence coming on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Marcus. Hey, John.
Well, first of all, I've got to admit, Saturday I went to the Board of Elections to vote, same place that Marcus was just referring to. I saw the line from afar,
Oh, no.
thought it was the line for voting, turned around and went back home. So,
Oh,
That makes me feel better. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
that's 3 for
So
3.
that's
That's
three of
just scary.
the other thing that is really interesting to me, and I believe I read it in Peggy Noonan's Saturday article that she writes every Saturday for the Wall Street Journal. She said she was not going to vote. So I'm asking somebody out there, see if they read it, because I think that's pretty big when somebody like a Peggy Noonan, who is kind of a biographer of Reagan, was in that period, said
Yeah.
she wasn't going to vote. So just a puzzle for you. Did you read that also? I wondered. So we've talked about the value sectors, we've talked about the market coming down, and the point here is that strategy is what gets you through these swings. And these swings are literally irrelevant to you as an investor if you're at the Naples Money Managers. And let me
That's right.
it's true.
It is true.
You know, for
Work.
years at a retail brokerage firm, I tried to manage clients' portfolio by choosing sectors that were maybe recommended by the company, and I couldn't stay away from the volatility. And everybody had that volatility, and that was a very it was not a satisfying thing to see a lot of swings in clients' portfolios.
Well, no, we're the ones sitting in front of clients going, gee, I'm sorry, you lost your life savings. That's not
Right.
fun.
So, but it's just
We
the
never
flux-
have done that, by the way.
Right, it's just a fluctuation. You know, I don't think we've ever seen in my career of 30 years, I don't know if you have, people losing all of their money. I've never seen that.
Only my husband and his IRA, but don't tell him I said that.
Okay, so I found an article from a couple of weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal. You may not be able to read this, but let me show you what strategy does. And this is really crucial. The headlines down here, if you can't see it, read dividend-rich stocks trail the market despite high yields. So they talked about companies like AT&T that has a high yield, ExxonMobil that has a high yield. They talked about Walgreens that has a very high yield. It's interesting to note that the whole article was about, even though you've invested in these high quality companies, your
Right.
performance lags the market. And we owned all of those companies over the last 52 weeks in our portfolio here. And it's interesting to note that if you take a comparison to our portfolios, there's something called an ETF that's the S&P 500 Dividend Aristocrats. So it's 65 companies like Exxon, AT&T, and it's an ETF, an exchange traded fund, and it tracks 65 companies with high dividends. There's some other parameters, but that's irrelevant. So if you look at the performance of this Dividend Aristocrat as of last Friday, the 30th,
Yeah. I'm getting ready for you.
it was down 4.65%
For the year, or just as for the week?
year to date.
Year to date, okay.
So if you held all these great companies that do very well over time, and they'll continue to do, they'll be fine. The point here is the fluctuation in between the times that they do well and maybe appreciate. So if you compare our portfolio to a negative 4.65, as of Friday, the portfolio was up 3.4%.
That's a pretty big swing.
Well, it really is, because you think 5% down to neutral, to zero, to up 3.5% basically. That's a lot of difference. And that difference is our strategy.
We have a great strategy.
We do have a great strategy.
We do. I mean, we've been doing it since, I've been doing it since I started in the business in 1985, but as a actual strategy, packaged and performance numbers since the year 2000, and it's pretty remarkable. And the Dow was down 7. The S&P 500 was up 1.25. So the Dow was down 7. We were up 3.5. The S&P 500 is only up 1.25. And I'm only bringing these numbers up. I hate to do a lot of number stuff, but I think at some point it becomes important to show you that while we all generally say we do 75% of what the Dow is on the upside, we never quite do as much, and we do 50% of what it might be on the downside. So it was down 7. If everything was the way I just said it, we would be down 3.5. Right? But we are up 3.5. So this is credit to our team, our stock picking, our strategy, and I can go on and on, but it's probably enough.
Right. Bottom line,
Yeah.
the enhanced dividend strategy, you know it as Mapato, that enhancement reduces downside risk
Right.
and increases income,
Absolutely.
which can be reinvested.
We
It doesn't
call it
have
our
to be taken.
double income strategy. Mapato, double income. I love it. It feels like a little bit of magic to me, because it does work, and we can show numbers to prove to people how well it works. A little tiny bit complicated. Anyway, I think that was probably all we're going to talk about today. I want to remind people to please, there's a closed caption, CC. If you're having trouble hearing Marcus or me or John, click on the CC. It's really quite good. And then just a little below that, you can share this. You can subscribe, and we're asking as many people to do that as possible. Remember, next week we're going to talk a little bit about annuities, and we are redoing our website. So as soon as we get that ready to launch, we're going to tell everyone about it and ask you to take a look at it and give us your thoughts. So until then, this is Money Matters, but most of all, and most importantly, you matter. See you next week.